This is episode 23, Prepositions and Prepositional Phrases, and I think we should just get stuck straight into it, so here we go. Okay, so first of all, the semantic features. Now the semantic features of a preposition is that it expresses the relationship between things and events. So let's write that. Now I think I might just pop this out the way a moment so that we can delve a little bit further into that. So there are lots of different types of prepositions. They can describe where something is, and that's in relation to prepositions of place. Examples of prepositions of place are things such as in, on, beneath, above, next to, beside, in front of, behind, and so on. Lots and lots, but they're all showing where something is. We can also use prepositions to show how things are moving. So these are called prepositions of movement. And examples of these ones are such as through, under, over, around, in between, along, and so on and so forth. We can also have prepositions that describe time. Words or prepositions such as at, on, in, on Tuesday, in 2016, at 6 o'clock. So these are all related to expressing time. And sometimes prepositions can also be more abstract, such as to, of, and by. So it's just some more abstract relationships, but they're still prepositions. But having said all that, what do prepositions look like? I mean, you've seen some examples there, but let's just have a look at what they look like and how we can describe what they look like. We'll go to here. Now, a lot of people would immediately say, well, prepositions are little words. My question to you is that a good description of prepositions? If you see a preposition, if you see a little word, do we immediately know that it's a preposition? Let's have a look at that. How about the word are? Are, as we learnt earlier, or are we still to learn it, is a determiner. It comes before the noun. Oh yes, we've learnt it. Okay, so this is not a preposition, but it is a small word. We've also got it or he. These are small words too, but they're not prepositions. They're pronouns. So, to say that prepositions are little words can be confusing because not all little words are prepositions. And similarly, not all prepositions are little words. If I was to think of some words that are prepositions but not little, I would come up with such a word such as underneath and in accordance with. Including, opposite. These are all prepositions, but none of them are little. So, in lieu of, throughout, following, with regard to, within. I mean, the list goes on and on. So we'll put some dots here to show just how big the list is. Needless to say that it can't be a preposition because it's not a short word, well, that's not 100% true. In order to absolutely define what is a preposition, we do need to go back to these properties that we're always talking about, the semantic features, the morphological features, and the syntactic features. So let's bring back the semantic features here, and we've said that it expresses the relationship between things and events. So regardless of whether they're short words or long words, it must do that. Okay, so morphologically speaking, prepositions can be simple or complex. Let's write that. So morphological feature is that prepositions can be simple or complex. Now, an example of a simple preposition would be something like in, because it's made up of just one word. And an example of a complex preposition would be in front of or next to, because it's made up of two or more words. And that's what a complex preposition is. Syntactically, prepositions can follow verbs, nouns, and adjectives. Let me write that down. So let's just have a little look at that. We'll pop over to another sheet over here. And here I've got some with verbs, with nouns, with adjectives already, so that we could come up with some ideas and pop them down so you can see what that means. So when we say that prepositions come with verbs, then we mean that they can follow verbs such as to believe in, so in always comes into believe, to suffer from, to insist upon or insist on. I think being a second language speaker and having to learn which prepositions go with which verbs is quite the challenge. Similarly, we have noun examples, and noun examples include a description of, a ban on, maybe a question about, and so on and so forth. So these are examples of noun phrases. I'm just going to put a before it so you can see it's clearly a noun phrase there. A question about, a description of, and a ban on. And similarly with adjectives, we've got adjective and preposition pairing such as to be good at or bad at, afraid of, fed up with, and so on and so forth. So these are what we mean when we say that prepositions work with verbs or work with nouns or work with adjectives. It's just the prepositions that we expect to see after each of these word classes. Okay, so let's come back here again with our morphological and syntactic and semantic descriptions. And we have a second syntactic behaviour, and that can be seen in the modern sort of abstract sense when prepositions are occasionally modified. So prepositions can be modified. An example of a preposition being modified might be something like, oh, I walked right into the house. Okay, so in this instance, right, to walk right into something, well, that's a modification of into. This is a very modern sort of take on how we use language, but it's there, and so therefore prepositions can indeed be modified. Okay, and I guess the final syntactic property is that prepositions can come before noun phrases to make prepositional phrases. So I've got some examples of prepositional phrases here, and we can have a look at them. So the first one that I have here is in the spooky darkness. I also have with friends and on the telephone. So let's start with those three. So in the spooky darkness, if we have a look closely, we have our preposition in here. And then following it, we have our noun phrase. Now we did look at some noun phrases earlier, but let's have a look at this noun phrase here. In this instance, darkness is the noun. Spooky is describing the noun, so it's an adjective. And there's our the article, definite article the, or the determiner the, describing the darkness or the spooky darkness. So this all together creates a noun phrase. Now if you put a preposition in front of a noun phrase, we have a prepositional phrase. Okay, let's have a look at this one here with friends. Friends is a noun. We know it's a noun, of course, because it's got its plural there, one friend, two friends. It's also a noun phrase because, of course, noun phrases can be made up of just one noun. And here's our preposition here, with. You put with or in front of friends and that whole thing becomes a prepositional phrase. So a prepositional phrase is a preposition followed by a noun phrase. Let's have a look at this last one here. We've got on the telephone, so on is our preposition. The is our determiner, describing, well, it's not describing, but it comes before the telephone, which is the noun. So the telephone, determiner followed by the noun, is our noun phrase. And then if you've got a preposition in front of that, then altogether it is the prepositional phrase. So I've got a couple more noun phrases here. You might recognize them because they were the same noun phrases that I used in the noun when I was talking to you about noun phrases way back in episode 9, I think it was. So here's two of them. We have 20 hats. We can label hats being the noun, and 20 is our number describing how many hats. It's an adjective. Okay, so this is our noun phrase here. So what do we need to do in order to make it a prepositional phrase? Well, we need to put a preposition in front of it. So I can put here under. That's a preposition. Label all these as P for preposition. And I'll label here under as preposition. So all of this becomes a prepositional phrase. And let's think of our last one, my thick textbook. What kind of preposition can we put in front of my thick textbook? So we've got textbook is the noun, thick is the adjective, my is the determiner. So my thick textbook is a noun phrase. We need to put a preposition in front of that to make a prepositional phrase. Let's say inside. Inside is a preposition, and in front of my thick textbook, it becomes the prepositional phrase. Okay, so hopefully you can clearly see that a prepositional phrase is a preposition which is in front of a noun phrase. Okay, so I think that describes prepositions and prepositional phrases. The next thing that we're going to move on to here is prepositions versus adverbs. Now, just recently we compared the different features of words such as that and these to decide whether they were pronouns or determiners, because there could be either. Now, there are also many prepositions that can also be adverbs too, depending on how they are used in the sentence, and it would be good to look into those a little bit more. So that's what our next video is going to do. So until then, thanks for watching The Language Code.